Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to a look at the nominees for Planet F1's race of the season. Once again, I'm joined by Jonty to discuss some of those races selected, and then for the final time, it's down to you. You can vote by following the link in the description that will take you over to planetf1.com, and your 8 nominees are Bahrain, China, Baku, Brazil, Germany, Monza, Silverstone, and the US Grand Prix. I think we'll try and do these in some kind of chronological order and start with Bahrain. To be honest, I kind of wish the season had started with Bahrain, Jonty, because after what was a pretty disappointing race in Australia after a long winter, Bahrain absolutely did deliver action from start to finish.
Oh, yeah, it was fantastic. And it was all real action as well. You know, everyone seemed to have superb pace. I don't know quite how they managed to pull that off. It's quite weird when I think back about it now. Everyone was genuinely quick.
I'll get the negative, if you like, out of the way first. And my only real issue with Bahrain is that the DRS was a little bit too OP after they'd extended that long straight section. But it did give us one hell of a decent triple overtake from Lewis Hamilton down that straight. So at least it gave us the action, which, like we said, after Australia, we kind of needed, because F1 was in a little bit of a dark place almost. There was a lot of criticism around it after a disappointing race in Melbourne. But Bahrain more than made up for that. And we got not just overtaking, but we got some interesting strategy. We got a little bit of drama as well and controversy with Verstappen versus Hamilton 1.0. There were a few more throughout the season, of course. And the other negative, I guess, as well, is we did see an injury in the pit lane due to Kimi Raikkonen's botched pit stop, which saw a mechanic injured. Thankfully, though, all okay in the end. But overall, I would say it's very difficult to look beyond that Grand Prix for race of the season.
You're quite right. It's very difficult to look past that. Like, as I said earlier, it's because it was all real. You know, we didn't have bizarre incidents forcing safety cars, things of that ilk. You know, it was all on-track action. Yes, there was a slightly powerful DRS, but it was still action, and it was still all being done on track by the drivers.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, I like Australia as a first race of the season, but only because I'm one of those that quite likes tradition. And I liked Bahrain as well at the start, but Australia's been there since, 96, I think? But I'm going to throw this question out there. We discussed it at the time. Back to Bahrain. Should Bottas have made that move, Jonty, for the win?
Absolutely, yes, he should have. He should have thrown it up the inside and throw caution to the wind. It's only the second race. At this point, there's nothing really to lose and everything to gain. If he'd made it and got it wrong, the worst that was really going to happen is he was going wide and still finishing second anyway, because there was 7 seconds back to third. You've got to make those moves when the chance is there.
I know we're looking at it with hindsight. He wasn't to know what was going to come that year, but that could have been a big point of his season. I tend to agree. I think he should have gone for it. We saw when Danny Rick made that move, as we were talking about the other day in China. You've sometimes got to, and somewhere like Bahrain, for example, when you've got a ton of runoff area on the exit of turn 1, just go for it. Like you said, worst that's going to happen is you're going to lock up and go straight on. Vettel has to get out your way. He wins the race and you finish second anyway, so go for it. We need to see more of that Bottas attitude that we saw in Spa when he made that move on Hartley, but a bit more of that, a bit more fighting attitude from Bottas. The next one, though, that I want to talk about is Baku, and a lot of people would probably pick this as their race this season. I'm going to be perhaps a little bit controversial. I'm not the biggest fan of the race in Azerbaijan. I know we've had 2 very, very good years there, but only because of chaos and safety cars. Without chaos and safety cars, I can't help but feel that every year more or less would be similar to Baku 2016. Maybe being a little bit harsh, and maybe that's a little bit extreme, but that's just my personal view on it. Good race, but it did rely on the Red Bulls being a little bit daft and a Bottas puncture and Vettel throwing it up the inside to give us a bit to talk about. Obviously, Alonso's recovery drive, that we talked about yesterday.
It's a case of picking your words on this one. I think it was a good race. It was an exciting race, which all the dramas with the safety cars and the incidents and Red Bull playing follow the leader badly. The most watched YouTube videos are crash compilations from motorsport. You know, it does add a massive element of excitement to a race and a bit of unpredictability, which can lead to insane results. You know, look who we had on the podium last year. But it does draw attention to Formula One. It's not the best way. We want to see raw racing on track without the added elements. But if that's what it takes to get more input into the sport and get more people watching, I suppose we're going to have to live with it. And it certainly wasn't unenjoyable.
It was probably one of the big defining moments of the race, so I suppose we ought to address it. A few people might remember it, but Daniel Ricciardo into the back of Max Verstappen, which wiped both the Red Bulls out. I've not changed my view on that. I do feel that was 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. but ultimately they are teammates and they're racing. There's no need to get that aggressive with each other. But the point I made at the time, and I'll stand by it now, Red Bull should have intervened long before it got to that point because they'd already had contact.
We always complain about team orders and teams stopping their drivers from racing, but there are times when they do need to just calm them down and say, look, we're in a great position here. Stop being so aggressive, tidy it up a little. And they really should have done that here because it cost them dearly.
And looking back, I know we're a little bit critical that he didn't go for that move in Bahrain, but I really did feel for Bottas in Baku, and that kind of summed up his first half of the season. But another race we're going to talk about, I know we talked about it the other day, but Germany, probably a season-defining race, a championship-defining race. Again, we talked about it the other day. Saturday, Lewis Hamilton distraught, cars broken down on the side of the road, looks like title's gone, and then Vettel on Sunday, it's all his for the taking, big championship swing. He puts it in the wall. But all in all, that Grand Prix, pushing the championship aside anyway, was still a very good race. Some rain as well. The only one that was really affected all season by a decent amount of rain. I thoroughly enjoyed Germany, not just for the drama, but for the action as well.
Yeah, there was plenty of action on track. Most of it coming down to the hairpin, if we're honest, but with the way that the straight curves, it always makes it look a lot more exciting. That's one thing I do like about the new Hockenheim layout. Yes, I yearn for the old days when it went off into the forest, but it's a serviceable track and it's given us something great this year.
I think overall it was a good race. I don't think it was a great race, but it did give us plenty to talk about, plenty of action. But I think, again, it was more about what it meant for the championship in the end than the race itself. Although we did get some other talking points. I guess team orders reared their head. Ferrari, frankly, should have made the switch with Vettel and Raikkonen much sooner. It was a shame, although maybe a little bit hypocritical based on what I've just said, but it was a shame that Mercedes pulled rank and said, no, Bottas, don't fight, because that was a great scrap to start with. Bottas was really going for that, and as we said a couple of times this week, we really want to see that from Valtteri.
Now, the other talking point with the weather, because it did have a big effect on the race, was how it just didn't come quite early enough. We saw the amount of water that was coming down during the podium celebrations, and it was an absolute torrent of water coming down. We saw images of the tunnel going under the track with a waterfall coming down the stairs. And that leads me to the Toro Rossos. They went for the full wet and got ridiculed by the commentators. But it was the right call. That rain was coming. If it had just come a little bit earlier, it would have been a Toro Rosso 1-2 because the amount of water, no car on inters or slicks was ever getting back to the pits. And it was such a shame. We love gambles like that when they pay off. But this time, they were just unlucky.
Oh, just imagine if that rain had come. I think even Hulkenberg would have been on for a podium if that had happened, because I think he was on the Inters at the time as well. So that could have been quite an interesting one. A few firsts there. On to Brazil, the last one we're going to talk about today. For me, a race that was very much defined by the Red Bulls for one reason or another. Some fantastic overtaking again by both of them. Wheel-to-wheel stuff quite literally by Max Verstappen, as we know. And also with Daniel Ricciardo, he made contact with Sebastian Vettel. But typical Brazil without the weather playing too much of a part.
Yeah, it was quite strange that. We know how Brazil can be. It's similar to Spa in the way that it makes its own weather. And we got a typical great Brazil race without that being involved, which was wonderful to see. Right from lap one. I mean, you remember the two Renaults side by side for what seemed like an entire lap. It was a terrific scrap. And we had plenty more of that going on throughout the field.
Yeah, I was going to say about the Renaults, that's one of my moments of the season from the midfield, just seeing Carlos Sainz and Nico Hulkenberg literally at times banging wheels. There is one glaring thing I suppose we need to talk about, and that is the move Verstappen and Esteban Ocon, which ended in Verstappen ultimately losing the race or having the race taken away from him, whichever way you look at that incident. Damage to his floor as well. I'm going to stick with what I said after the race. I don't think either driver is totally blameless in that one. Yes, okay, Verstappen could have left more space, or frankly some space, but Esteban Ocon is the lap car in that situation and doesn't need to be putting himself in that position. He's interfering with the race leader. It'll go down like a lead balloon, this bit. For me, Verstappen is enough ahead in turn 2 to, as the race leader again, have earned the right to a bit more space. So I think Ocon takes a bigger slice of the blame, but neither driver is totally blameless in that one.
Yeah, you're quite right. There is definitely an element of blame on both. But I have to say, despite the right to unlap yourself, he does have to realise it's the race leader. He wasn't fighting for anything. Yes, he could have unlapped himself and he was on a faster tyre, but he wasn't gaining anything. He was far from the point. And if anything, it kind of opens up the argument for blue flags for me of why another reason they should be got rid of. If there wasn't any blue flags, Max would have been intrinsically more aware and more wary of a faster lapped car trying to get through. He would have been leaving more space just in case.
But were you as surprised, Jonty, to see Red Bull bombing past Mercedes and Ferraris on the straight? I know they had DRS and at times maybe better on their tyres, but still it was a surprise given the apparent power deficit between Renault and Ferrari and Renault and Mercedes to see them almost breezing past them. Yes, they've still got to get it done in the braking zone, which is what we want to see, but it was really good to see and a bit refreshing in many ways.
Yeah, it was good to see. They do have an element of the altitude which was leaning in their favour, but nothing like the amount that you get at Mexico. But it was still great to see, and hopefully they can keep that going because they've been very strong the end of the year.
I think we'd all love to see that one, absolutely. But Brazil, maybe not race of the season for me. I'm going to come to you first. I have a feeling we're going to agree, Jonty, but if you're voting on this one, which was your race of the season?
It's very difficult to look beyond Bahrain, to be quite honest. As I said earlier, it was all real action on track without safety cars and bizarre incidents mixing things up and making it artificial. And that was just wonderful to see so early in the season as well.
See, I'm inclined to agree on Bahrain. I did pick that one out as my race of the season, but if I have to pick a different one, because it had a little bit of everything, I would probably go for Germany. But ultimately, it doesn't matter what we think. It all comes down to you guys. You can vote for either Bahrain, China, Baku, Brazil, Germany, Monza, Silverstone, or the US by following the link in the description down below. That will take you over to Planet F1. Again, the vote closes on Saturday, December 8th, and we'll be revealing the results on Monday, December 10th. In the meantime, though, you can follow me over on social media. Links to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and to Discord are all in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.